We are live. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are joining from. It's Pratik. I'm founder at Testlify and Webzoli and Insidia. A lot of companies I know, but I've been into like entrepreneurial journey for last decade, I think. So today, before even like introduce my guest, I would like to know where you guys are joining from. I'm joining from Tel Aviv, Israel. Our guest is joining from UK, London. And so we would love to know where you guys are joining from. Put down in the comments below. We will say you hello. Now let me introduce you to top 100 influencer in HR tech. He's a very special guest, Mervin Dinen, a talent acquisition analyst, a researcher, writer, analyst, and influencer collaborating with advertising, recruitment, HR, and technology businesses around the emerging trends that impact hiring. He partners with HR and recruitment technology business to create the thought leadership reports that document the emerging trends impacting the hiring, retention, development, and encouraging of talent. Engagement of talent, excuse me for that. He's also an award winning blogger who works with recruitment technology companies on content marketing strategies and creation of thought leadership white papers. Wow, he previously spent over 20 years working with recruitment and HR. Now, one more big thing to introduce him. He was also recognized as top 100 global influencer in HR technology in 2019, 2020, and 2021. And I hope you will get one for 2022. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the introduction, Pratik. And yes, no, I am a top global influencer for 2022 as well.
Oh wow! So yes, something more to celebrate. Mervin,
Yeah.
such an incredible track record you got. It took me a while to introduce you. We would love to know more about your backstory. Why don't you share that with the audience?
I could do. Yes, it's an interesting backstory, I suppose. It's a little bit unusual. I actually trained and qualified as an accountant. And I didn't really, I must admit, I was an accountant for a few years, but it never really inspired me. I found it boring. I used to go along to career consultants and they used to say, well, you're in the wrong job. And they did some analysis on me, one of the early, I suppose, personal, analysis, looking at your strengths and weaknesses. And they said, well, you should be in sales and marketing. That's where all your strengths are. And so I started in recruitment, recruiting accountants, then recruiting HR people,
Mm-hmm.
and gradually it's developed from that. I was an early adopter of social media back in about
Mm-hmm.
2008, 2009. Started writing blogs, started writing reports for companies, and then people started approaching me. I got approached to write a book, and it's kind of developed from that. So it's I've not really followed any path. I never set out to be anything in particular. And I've just kind of, I suppose, gone with whatever is best next. So it's I have to say that as I earn, I suppose, my living from writing and speaking, I never thought I was any good at writing. And here's a message for everybody: I didn't think I was very good at writing because my English results in my exams, my O levels in the UK, weren't very good. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you know what? I thought I was a good writer. I'm obviously not. What I didn't realize is that there was a glitch that year, and a lot of people got their English remarked and ended up with top grades. So, had I done that and got top grades, I probably would have had a different path because I'd have thought, oh, I am a writer after all. So, there you
Wow.
go. Yeah. Follow your passion, not what they tell you.
That is incredible story. Thank you for sharing that, Marvin. I see that you're also an author, right? So tell us about your book, Exceptional Talent: How to Attract, Hire, Develop, and Retain Employees, and what drove you to write that book.
Well, first, I've got to say there are two books. I'm going to hold them both up. Co-authored books,
Wow,
Exceptional Talent, the one that we're going to talk about today,
I
and
love the magnet thing. It's like
yeah,
amazing.
and Digital Talent. There you are.
Digital talent.
They're both co-authored with Matt Older, who some people might know as the host of the Recruiting Future podcast. And I've got to get a little plug in because I have my own podcast starting on Monday called HR Means Business, and you'll see me sharing the very first episode on Monday. Um,
So,
what?
on that note, I would love to be on that show.
Okay, you will be, Pratik.
Thank you,
Um,
Murray.
well, I was approached by a publisher to write the book. They saw me speak at an event, and I was sharing research. I'd been involved in writing reports around about, I suppose, 2015, 16, 17, about how, hiring was changing, how talent management was changing, how onboarding was changing, and how everything was kind of now underpinned by tech. And that it's the traditional, I suppose, way that we got hired, which is kind of applying to a company, waiting to hear back, going through interviews, waiting for an offer, waiting to starting our induction. That had been changed because technology, we expect everything to flow seamlessly immediately. We always want to know where we are on the journey, in the process. And we are used to that, with the obvious examples, people like Amazon and stuff. You know exactly when it's going to be delivered. They keep updating you all the time. And of course, the whole hiring, the whole acquisition, development of people wasn't like that. But expectations, most of my research showed that candidate and employee expectations were that they would have this constant flow. Um, and so that's started doing research in that, interviewing people, and put together the concept of what we call the new talent journey, which is this from attention. So there is a relationship between somebody and a company they might join purely through digital kind of interactions and interface. Attraction, actually hiring people, acquiring, the actual interviewing, offering, the onboarding, the talent management, development, and the retention, which is either retention of employee or retention of relationship. So if somebody leaves us, they become an alumni, but companies now, again, because of technology, were creating great alumni networks, and those alumni can get more skills and come back and work for us again, or they can refer people to us. So there was this almost seamless circular journey which kind of revolves, and that's what we wanted to write about. And so exceptional talent really describes that, and digital talent looks at a bit of a post-pandemic sheen on that, with how some of the things have changed. It's actually the journey is much shorter now, with more happening, but even more is happening through technology.
So true. So how do you think, it affects when, when companies are working on creating their employer brand? Do you share something in your book about employer branding that helps in, hiring or attracting the right talent?
Do it's both of the books contain quite a bit on employer branding. I suppose when it comes to employer branding, there's two or three things to say. The first thing, as I might say, with other parts of the journey, it might be something that a company creates, but it's actually what the employees experience. And this happens again and again and again. It is people will say we've created really good interviews, but then you look at the feedback online and people are moaning about the interview process. You go on Reddit recruiting hell, and it's like I went to this company, I still haven't heard back 3 months later or something. So it's very much what candidates and employees experience as opposed to what we create. Having said that, I think that the flow of it is what's important. It's people expect to know where they stand at all times, and I think that is the bit that organizations have struggled with in the past, because sometimes we don't want people to know. We kind of, the employer brand might be a very open company, but when it comes to hiring, that's different. That's candidate experience, and it's like people want to hold back because they don't know they've got more people to interview. You need to come back and meet maybe a line manager, and so the kind of the experience of what it's like to work somewhere and what it's like to join somewhere can be two quite different things. Employer branding will nearly always give the impression that this is a great place to work where you can achieve everything you want, you're looked after, you're given opportunities. But it's how it's experienced at all the different stages, the different touch points, that determines whether or not people think that or feel that the organization lives its employer brand. And as we know, there's plenty of research quoted in the book, and if anybody's seen me speak before, they know I put up slides with a load of stats on it. A lot of people kind of they look for what people say online about a company rather than what the company says about itself. They won't
Makes
apply
sense.
to a job they're interested in if they see negative reviews. If they if they have applied and they're being interviewed, but they see again negative reviews about the candidate experience, 6 weeks later I still haven't heard, kind of thing, they'll drop out the process. And I think one of the things about the acquisition, and I apologize if I'm jumping around to the audience, one of the things about the actual applying for jobs is that applying for jobs is a very personal thing. And the job applicants, candidates apply for very personal reasons. And we don't know what they are. They might be to improve themselves. They might be the sole breadwinner in their family. They might have other responsibilities, caring responsibilities. They might need a different mix of work. They might need to earn more money. They might feel they're being held back and need more skills. They apply very much as individuals with hopes and needs, and they want to be treated as such. And
Absolutely.
so I think part of what we try to bring out in the books is that the journey has to treat people as individuals, so that
Yeah, yeah.
if you apply to a job, and you should always know where you stand. And even if it's, we'd like to talk to you again, we just can't for the next 2 weeks, then you do that, but you send them some information. Say, in the meantime, look at this, or here's something to read, or here's how to prepare for the next stage. Keep engaging them with information, with content, or a video. Here's a video of the line manager describing what the team's like.
The communication is the key.
Yeah.
So this leads me to the next question. Before I ask you that next question, I would like to invite our audience to ask questions if they have any. I want to say hello to Gema. She's joining us from UK. Hi. Vinay, hi from India. Hi Swapnil, Deepak, Shubham. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for joining in. If you are joining us now, so we would love to hear where you guys joining from. If you have questions for Mervyn, put down in the chat. Mervyn, coming back to the question, I would love to know, based on the things you mentioned about, communication is the key, treating candidates as humans rather than just talent or piece of resume. Communicating makes technology makes it easier, right? So how do you think platforms out there in HR tech today helps you automate the process so that candidates can have a better experience while they are on a hiring journey with you?
I think there are a number of ways, and I think that the tech enables us to almost keep in constant touch with candidates. And I think what companies they aren't used to that. So the mindset, particularly at manager level, direct level, might be that, we've interviewed somebody, we brought them back in, we're quite interested, but we've got others to see, and then there's silence. But of course, that's not the way the world works. As
Yeah.
the famous comment from I can't remember off the top of my head, it was Gartner, Brian Kropp. It was candidates want their 9 to 5 to look like their 5 to 9, and their 5 to 9 is full of endless experiences and constantly in the flow of things, and they want their 9 to 5 to be like that as well. But applying for jobs within a company, applying for a role isn't like that. And I've done some research on this. If people connect with me afterwards, I'm happy to send them copies of research I've done around, say, candidate experience, how you can keep iterating this, how you can keep providing information to candidates in between interviews, or whilst you're still doing a first round of interviews or second round of interviews, by keeping them in the loop with information, knowledge and a bit more about the company. As I said, yeah, video content is very important. A lot of organizations don't like doing it. I know a lot of talent acquisition people, when I say this, say, our hiring managers, if I go to my hiring manager and say, would you record a 30-second clip of saying what this role is all about and what the opportunities for development are, they'll go, oh, no, no, no. They don't
Yeah.
want to commit themselves to saying something, or they don't want to be held responsible for something they might have said. Um, but that's what the candidates want to hear. That's how they live their lives. That's what they expect to see. They don't want to
Yeah.
look at a job description. They want somebody to tell them what the job is. Um, and I think that it's very it's it's not easy for traditional organizations to transform in that way, but I think that's why it's a lot of time is spent, a lot of investment is made in the application, the attraction, the application and interviewing
Yeah.
phases, because so we can give candidates that seamless experience.
And now, like, what are the best channels or to source the right candidates for those roles?
Ah, there are many. There are many, many channels. Most, and it's funny because I was involved. I was chairing a virtual conference yesterday, and I put in the question about, what's the biggest challenge, and whenever I do that, the biggest challenge is always attracting candidates. Um, the I suppose there are many channels. The obvious ways that people use, well, historically were job boards, and they still are. You have the customer relate, the CRM technology, where you can keep people who've shown interest and keep feeding them information and new roles. Um, there's obviously LinkedIn. I mean, a lot of talent acquisition people that I speak to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. They've got now the tech that sits within LinkedIn that they've got, which can look for people who match quite specific profiles. There are many different ways to source rather than the traditional, um, I suppose the traditional routes.
Agree.
But I mean, in terms of channels, each organization, if I say that, oh, LinkedIn's the way, then it's kind of like it is. Yeah, it's almost like, well, we'll do that and not something else. I think you've got to try all routes, and this is why the alumni network is so important. People who have worked for you before, they're advocates for your business.
Yeah.
Let them know what's going on. They may have left you and acquired new skills, and actually might be very relevant for the new job. Um, so the customer base, the client base, they all let everybody know what you're hiring for. And you'll be surprised. Applications can come in from very different places. Um,
Usually, organization don't do this. Once the employee leaves the company, they basically have zero communication with your ex-employees, which is something needs a high attention. I feel this is like can be a big highlight for this session we are doing. I personally feel as an hiring manager, I'm like interviewing a lot of candidates, and people who worked with me in the past are still like in touch with me. And if I figure out a way to communicate with them that I'm hiring for this and this position, this is what we're doing, and if they had a better experience with you while working with you, it's incredible. They can be your ambassadors to promote your company, hire great talent. I agree with you completely.
yeah,
Uh,
and the
yeah,
the power of the referral from an ex-employee is really important, because
yeah,
it's for an individual, for somebody who's worked there before and now left, said, actually, I had a great time working there. Yeah, I
yeah.
left for this reason or that reason, but it's a great place to work, or yeah, I would recommend it. Yeah, that's very powerful. And again, personal recommendation is quite important to candidates in this market.
I agree. I agree. So, on apart from like this thing we discussed, what are the other areas to work on to improving hiring and retention?
Well, Maitree has just come in as an employer branding is really powerful. It is. It is. It has to be very real. I did some research on this 4 or 5 years ago. The employer branding has to really represent. what the experience of working there. There's little point in something glossy. I mean, originally employer branding was like, have a look at our offices, aren't they fantastic? Everybody's got an Apple Mac. Everybody's got a, we've got, look at this coffee machine we've got. It's great.
Yeah.
Starbucks are envious of us. That kind of thing isn't why people work in an organization. They're nice to
Yeah.
haves, but it's people working in an organization because the work means something to them. They're improving themselves. They're learning things. They're enjoying being part of something. And in it, all you've got to hold on to them is the coffee's great, and you're in a great location. Then you're not going to keep them. So the branding of what it's like, and that's why as the
They're gonna
point's been,
find a.
been
They're
made
gonna
in
find.
the comments, yeah,
They're
that's
gonna
that's
find a better coffee machine.
yeah, video content in particular, content from managers about what it's
Yeah.
like to work there, what their teams are like, what they're looking for, because that's what people often say. My years in recruitment, I would talk to somebody about a role that I was recruiting for, and they might come back a day or two later and say, "Listen, I spoke to somebody that I used to work with who knows somebody who worked there, and said it wasn't a great place to work. People were coming and going all the time. So I can then go back to the company and say, look, I can't say where this came from, but if you like, your employer brand or your reputation isn't great. Can you tell me, is there something you're not telling me? And then, funnily enough, you would then get a conversation with somebody say, look, we had a situation a couple of years ago where we did possibly churn a bit. We hired people who then left after a short space of time. There are a couple of cultural issues that we hadn't identified, but we're on top of that now. And that's the kind of message which is really important. So if there's been an issue in the past, don't hide it, because the candidates will find out about it somewhere. This thing called the internet stores information for a long time, and there will always be a way to find something like this out. People, if you're ABC Limited, people, when they search, they don't just search ABC Limited job opportunities. They'll search things like, I work at ABC Limited. I used to work at ABC Limited when I worked at ABC Limited, and things like that. I give an example often when I'm speaking that somebody told me about 4 or 5 years ago, and I think it's still relevant. Somebody was doing a search like that, and they came across somebody's personal blog. It's a hobby blog. Somebody used to take landscape photos and things. It was one of their passions, and they'd written on their blog, on their kind of, this is what I do, blah blah blah. When I worked at, and actually named the company, we had a couple of big projects on, so I didn't get as much time to take pictures, which is why there's a gap between March and September that year or something. And somebody said, you know what? I didn't apply because of that, because I don't want to work somewhere where suddenly the pressure's on and you don't have a hobby, you don't have a life. But
Yeah.
the person who wrote the blog wasn't saying this is an awful place to work. He was just explaining why there weren't any pictures from that time. So just a small thing like that can be so kind of, you'll be surprised. It's the employer brand is as much about what other people say about what you're like to work for than what you say about yourself.
Yep, yep, so true, so true. Well, I have a question from the audience.
Yes.
How to keep up with the top talent going for job offers shopping at this time of agile market conditions? Uh,
Um, is that saying because they're shopping around because it's a hiring market, and so people are,
well,
I
I
presume,
think I think what the
yeah.
question is referring to is like, even though if they have a job offer with the top talent, they're still hunting for better, like, offers. So how do you deal with that part?
Um, that's a good question. I suppose the first thing I would say if somebody asked me that is, well, why? If you've made somebody an offer, how, why is that offer still out there and they're still interviewing with others? So, yeah, as part of the offer, has there been a close? Is there an offer, but it's not been confirmed? Because the one of the things which I was going to come on to, I suppose, is the next stage, which is onboarding. Um, And yeah, historically, onboarding or induction is what we do when somebody starts. But again, in the digital era, onboarding starts almost as soon as you take somebody from first to second interview, because if you give somebody a first interview and you call them back for a second interview, there's obviously something there. That might be somebody who you hire, or there's somebody there who you might hire again in the future. So the onboarding it starts early, so that it's not something that people get an offer, accept it, and 2 months later they start and then here's your induction. It's something that's going on all the time, with information, with keeping them up to date with what's going on, giving them things to read, letting them meet their team virtually, and it's something that happens if you start bringing people to second or third interview. There is obviously interest there, and the one thing that puts people off is a lack of information. I saw a bit of research, about 2 3 years ago. It's in the book, where somebody did a study using primarily SMEs hiring, and they looked at a couple of hiring campaigns, and what they did was speak to the candidates and found out how they felt at different stages, from application, from hearing back, from going for interview to second interview to third interview to offer to then starting, and how engaged they felt with the business at each stage. And they asked them to measure four things. One was speed with which things were moving. One was flow of information. I've forgotten the other two, but those were the two most important. Because what we found, well, what it found, I didn't do it, but it was shared with me, is that the 2 points where candidates said they felt least engaged with the organization were between first and second interview and after having received an offer before starting. And the bit on the chart that was lowest at that both of those was information. So at the points where we need them engaged and really keen, they're not getting the information. They're not getting any information. So they don't, there's nothing to keep them engaged. And that was always interesting. I will always say to people, keep information, keep content flowing, give people access to different things. If you like, if you interview somebody and you bring them to second interview, they're good enough to come to second interview. They might be somebody you hire. They might be somebody that you hire in the future. Certainly, if I think that there's research out there that shows if you interview somebody and bring them back again, if you don't hire them, then if there's another role, they're much more likely to be interested in it if you've already brought them in and interviewed them a couple of times, and then explain to them why that you're not taking them through to offer stage. It could be because they need more experience or they need certain skills, and they can go away and do that. But it's this information flow, which the process we're talking about, the attraction hiring, it's the information flow. And silence, whether you're a candidate, a new starter, or an employee, is deafening. It's kind of like, if nothing is happening, you're not hearing things, you're not finding things out, then you begin to think either there's no interest in you or you begin to lose interest.
This is
So I think to answer, I think it's Ajita, is it that so firstly you need an information flow. You need to keep in touch with people. If you can't get back to them for a few days, and don't forget, people are used to using their phones and going onto Amazon and buying something and being told instantly when it's going to be delivered. So if you can't do that, give them information. So don't just leave them hanging. Say, well, we can't answer. The question comes in, when will I hear back? And it's like, we don't know, so don't say anything. It's got to be, you will hear back within the next 5 days. In the meanwhile, have a look at this, or something about the organization. The hiring team should have access to a lot of, particularly if it's a big organization, got their own employer branding team, should have access to information, to content that can keep candidates interested.
This is beautiful and amazing thing which you mentioned. Usually, like as an influencer as well, you're continuously engaged with your audience and they want to hear from you. Parallel, like if you are in e-commerce store, you shopping for a product, You know your journey, how it will be packed, shipped, and delivered. Communication is there. Similarly, in the hiring process, they need to get inspired and connected towards the mission when you're communicating your expectations, your values, your mission, and what is something expected from the next round of the interview, in the hiring stage, in the negotiation stage, while onboarding itself. What are the expectation, what are the key responsibilities look like in first month, second month, third month. I think, yeah, clarity and communication is really important here. How do you think in, like, top stage of the funnel, when there are a lot of resumes for HR, uh, there is a challenge in, like, HR space, where they want to screen those candidates. Currently, like, based on data, it's around like 40% plus people, they actually lie on resumes. You might be able to give me a better number, I'm sure. But how do, like, HR can make sure that they are actually going for 30 minutes or 1 hour an interview with the right person who's actually a potential candidate? How do they evaluate or screen those candidates?
I don't have any data on how many CVs are false. I think that I'd be surprised if it's that high because a lot of applications now, I mean, obviously, the traditional way, I go back to when you typed out a CV and posted it off, or you emailed it over. Whereas most people will now apply through an online portal, which will ask them various questions. Um, there
There
will
is a
be
reason I'm sorry to interrupt. The reason I'm asking this, because there are a lot of people who are, let's say, they are into customer support, but when they see the position for sales development, they will just change the title of the CV, they will change the experience, and then send the resume. Again, the person is, like, customer support person in real life, but he wants a job desperately, so he's willing to switch the position. So, in terms of, like, evaluating the skill for the position, how can HR, like, make data driven decision? I think maybe that is the right frame of the question. Yeah.
Well, we have kind of chatbots that do that now. We have artificial intelligence that most people. I mean, the data does show that candidates are happy to be interviewed by a chatbot, or at least in the early stages of the process. So
Yeah.
there is the possibility to screen out because of that. If you have a very competent liar, and I don't, I use that word guardedly, because if people are embellishing their experience, there might be a reason. It might just be that they think they've got more experience of something than they have. Um, but I mean, I would have thought that with the technology we have, particularly with the AI we have now, that most of the platforms have behind them, something like that could be identified if there is maybe something that's not adding up, if you like. There's a query, there's a question mark over something, because it there will be answers that don't stack up. But I mean, I can go back to, as I said, when I was a recruiter. It's kind of like, the people post them in, and then you're interviewing them, and they sound very plausible, and you ask them questions, and then they say, oh no, they did this, they did this, they did this. And then they go and meet the client. Client says they haven't done any of that. So it's that I think my honest belief is that is much harder nowadays, because the kind of the technology that sits behind it. And I'm trying to make this more, I suppose, a cultural conversation than getting in a deep dive into different bits of tech. But we'll kind of flag up, or will kind of pick up when things are not as they should be.
So how do, like, data driven has been, like, very buzzword these days, specifically in, like, HR tech space. How do you, like, how do a recruiter make data driven decision, some analytical tools for recruitment to make their process better, hiring in the initial stages, well, versus, like, onboarding and retention. What are your thoughts here?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, I don't want to say everything that's to do with tech, but obviously, most of the people I'm sure listening to this, most of the people that we see on a daily basis talking and writing about this online on LinkedIn and everything, have tech solutions. I mean, the been a huge investment in technology over the last 4 or 5 years. And with talent acquisition technology integrating with different things, they have different bolt-ons. They integrate with it. So, in terms of assessments, in terms of interviewing, in terms of so I think that it's we have a lot more data available um, if we know how to use it properly. And I think most organizations do. Sometimes they have more more data than they need, but I think I think that the talent acquisition process collects and creates a lot of data, and it should lead to better decisions. I think that the kind of problem areas that we're talking around at the moment are possibly more with traditional recruitment, where it's kind of one-to-one interviewing with a hiring manager, and you're very much going on what's been put in front of you on a CV, and it's kind of you kind of asking somebody to expand a bit more on their experience of something, and they're kind of talking around it a bit. So I suppose those kind of things I'm sure still happen, because there's plenty of businesses out there recruiting who don't have the investment in tech that we see all day, every day on LinkedIn, on Twitter, but all the events we go to. But I think that is still very much a one-to-one, a person-to-person situation, and I don't I don't have any particular advice for somebody who's doing a face-to-face interview and isn't sure if they're having the ball pulled over their eyes or not, other than to kind of use that sixth sense.
Makes sense. So before we end this session, I would love if you can summarize, how we can attract, hire, develop, and retain the right people that we want in our team.
It's well, I described the journey, the ongoing journey. So it's understanding it and seeing it as a journey. I think that the key points I would make are the experience. So candidate experience is something that I've researched a lot and I speak about a lot. And I did a session last week somewhere, and it was kind of, it's kind of, we've got all the research, we've spent fortunes on candidate experience, and it's still no good. I think candidate experience is one of those things we'll never quite get right, because too many organizations don't see the value, I suppose, in the cost in giving a great candidate experience, except to the people you want to hire. So I think that is candidate experience is always going to be an issue. I think the key thing is having this what we call the new talent journey. So we're talking about digital talent. We're in the digital era. Digital talent has intellectual curiosity. They know that their roles are changing. They know the world of work is evolving, and they want to know what their role is in it, how they can adapt, how they can learn. So they have this intellectual curiosity. They know the jobs are changing. They know they need to keep upskilling. We talk about skills, not jobs now. A lot of organizations are searching on skills as opposed to specific jobs you've done before. And people want the access to learning, the access to knowledge, to know that they're joining an organization that will support their development, enable their performance, as opposed to the more traditional top-down management and direction. We talk now about performance enablement, not performance management, and that's because we're giving the platforms for people to do that. I think that the experience is important, and what every organization needs to do, and it's not easy, is identify what I call the moments that matter to employees. So the experience is never, what we create. It's not like inviting people around for dinner and saying, "Oh, this is the ambience this evening. We're going to have candles. We're going to have." It's work isn't like that. It's kind of we don't curate an ambience for our employees. What employees experience is are there too many meetings? Is too much being put upon them? Is there a lack of connection? With remote working, is there a lack of support in the business? Are they not
Yeah.
being recognized? Are they not having their well-being supported? Well-being is a huge issue at the moment. There's quite a bit of research coming out at the moment that people are looking to organizations to help, I suppose, support their well-being. There was some stats out recently, 2/3 of people phone in sick. Their problem is their mental health or their mental well-being, but they can't say that because they know they'll be judged. So they just say they're not feeling well, or they just say that they make an excuse for not being able to work that day. And so that is something that needs to change, because well-being and engagement leads to productivity. And as we all know, the buzzword is productivity paranoia at the moment, with lots of organizations feeling that if they can't see people sitting in front of them, then they're not very productive.
Yeah.
So I think all of this is kind of, and I'm not trying to make it sound too wishy-washy, but it is an endless cycle. And that's why we talk about it as the new talent journey. It just repeats and repeats. But it's understanding the experience. It's understanding what employees experience, helping support them, helping recognize them, engage them, particularly looking forwards. Certainly in the West, we're looking at what they call a cost of living crisis. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on organizations to help support their employees who might not be able to help support them financially, but to help support them in other ways, maybe through recognition, through benefits, through reward, through different ways. So it's quite an exciting time because things are changing and evolving. But it's also quite I suppose, a difficult time for organizations to actually adapt and cope with this change.
Marvin, that is a superbly insightful session. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are not following Marvin already on LinkedIn, you should connect with him. If you're looking for an amazing speaker for your next event, he's your man. I can definitely vouch for him. Thank you so much for your expertise, Marvin. If you are not connected with me on LinkedIn, I would love you to connect. If you have any questions, want to learn more about Testlify, you can visit testlify.com. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, Pratik.